there, this is Preeti. Welcome to Stamp Along with Rubbernecker. And today I have a very easy to do project. I'm going to make a Thanksgiving invite. We're going to also make a coordinating Thanksgiving placeholder, like a name place when you have your guest over for Thanksgiving. So let's begin with how I created these two projects. It's really easy, trust me. So here is a sample of how I did the printing for the invitation. So this is just a plain copy paper. I just created an invite using my Photoshop. I put a wording in there, and then I also added the names at the bottom of the pages, and I printed them all out onto the cardstock. This is exactly how I did it. First I printed on a copy paper, and then I printed it on the cardstock. And then after I was done printing on the cardstock, I went ahead and cut them. So the one with the invitation is cut at 4 by 5.25, and the other one for the placeholder, it's 4 by 6 inches. So we're starting off with this invitation one. So I've taken that Cornucopia stamp I showed you earlier, and I'm just going to stamp and emboss that right above the invitation that I printed out using some embossing ink, because I am going to emboss this Cornucopia with some gold embossing powder. And once I'm done embossing with gold, I am going to copy color it. So you can see here I've finished the embossing. I'm going to speed the coloring here, but I'm going to walk you through the coloring process this time. So I've just started off by adding some brown, this is E39, to the basket of the Cornucopia. So I'm just adding some shadow area where I think would be the darkest, and making sure that I'm laying all the cast shadows upon that's casting on the basket as well, using the same dark ink. And then I'm going to blend that color with E35, and then E33 and E31. I don't know if you guys have any plans for Thanksgiving this year. Every year, my family, we have a tradition where we invite somebody from the church or any acquaintance that we know, usually young men and young women and men who don't have a family to go to, are either here for college or for work and they don't know where to go for Thanksgiving, or people who really don't know what Thanksgiving is about. We actually invite them, or we come to know them, and we meet them through church, or we meet them through friend circle, however, and then we invite a couple of people over for Thanksgiving every year and have a meal and share the story of Thanksgiving, and just have a good time, just having a good fellowship with each other. But this year, unfortunately, because of the virus, the coronavirus, we won't be doing that, because we want to be safe, not only for ourselves but also for others. But my children and our family was a little disappointed about not having a fancy meal and having guests over. So I decided that I would send these invites to my children on 2 days before Thanksgiving. So I created this invitation just for them, and just wanted to put it in front of their rooms in the night, so that when they get up in the morning, they have invites in front of their room, so they feel it is a special Thanksgiving, regardless whether we're spending it with others or not. Anyway, as I was rambling along, I continued coloring. So I have added some purples there. You can see some red and RV colors for the grapes. I'm thinking the cluster of fruits that are back in the cornucopia or in the basket look like grapes to me, so I just added some grapes, and then I decided to color the corn like a regular yellow corn, and then I'm also going to add, so there's some oak leaves all over, and I wanted the oak leaves to have the golden hue rather than the orangey hue. So I just created some yellow tones on the oak leaf to give that golden hue. There is a oak tree behind our house in our backyard which has really pretty yellow leaves on it right now, and I thought maybe that would be the way to go with the oak leaves as well. And you can see I'm just adding colors, and I'm also, as I choose the color palette, I just chose similar color families, so the same yellows and oranges within that color family. So I'm not putting too many colors, and I'm making sure that I have sufficient a use of that color. Like for example, I use the browns for the basket, and I also use the same browns for the potatoes on the ground and on the bottom, outside the basket, and also the acorns. And then I'm using reds here for the apples. So it's again a derivative of the reds that I used for the grapes, so it's not too far off. So I'm kind of building very similar colors, but I'm also making sure that these have a very fall rich deep color, fall colors like purples and reds and yellows. When you think about fall, those are the colors that come in mind, so I'm keeping in mind those shades of colors. And then when I colored the maple leaves, I kind of added some green and yellows and sorry, green and oranges in it, just to give that maple leaf colors, the changing colors of the fall for the maple leaves. And now I'm just getting ready to color the. So here you go. You can see I'm coloring the maple leaves as I told you. I'm just adding some green and some. So I'm starting off with some yellow hues, not really yellow, it's kind of yellow red hues, YR18 and 615 and YR12, I think so. And then I'm also going to add some greens into the maple leaves, and then I'm going to blend them out with some YG21. And YG21 is a good color to blend out the yellow reds as well as the greens, because it has the yellow tint into it and makes it easy to blend those colors. Now moving on to the pumpkin. So I'm just coloring the pumpkin with the same again, YR18, 15 and YR12. So I'm just adding some grooves in the pumpkin. Like pumpkins have those grooves in them. What do you call them? I don't know what you call it. They look like they look like grooves, I suppose. So I'm just adding that using my Copic colors, giving that texture to the pumpkin. And sometimes I like to color the same image twice over once, two times, one after the other, is mainly because I feel like the lightest color sometimes desaturates that brighter color. So going over it another time, the second time, helps it to keep the nice bright color. So the pumpkin on the right side to the orange pumpkin, I'm going to color it green. And the green that I'm using is G85, and I'm also using YG63, G21 and YG61. Now I do have all the color description and the colors that I'm using in this video in the description box below, so you can definitely see the colors that I have used. So I'm using these colors to blend that pumpkin, and again I'm creating that texture that I talked about earlier with the yellow pumpkin with the green as well. And then there are two pumpkins, one that's outside and one inside the basket, and these I'm going to color like the white pumpkins that you see out nowadays. And then I'm just adding W3, E40 and E41, and really very light colors, but you need to add some kind of shading even to your whites to make it look like whites. Anyway, so now I'm done coloring all the stuff inside the cornucopia, and now it's time to add some grounding to that. I don't want these things to look like they're floating somewhere in midair, so we're just going to ground it. So I'm using some warm colors to ground this basket, and I'm just using W5 as the darkest, and then I'm going to blend it out with W3, W1 and W00. And when you're creating ground or shadows, you want to make sure that you're going horizontal. You don't want to go in any other direction. You want to make sure that your lines are horizontal to the image, and that gives the most realistic shadow or grounding to your object. And there you can see I'm almost done with all my coloring, and I'm just going to wrap this up here, and here you go. Now the whole coloring is all done. And I'm going to move on to the next step of building this invitation. So I'm taking a craft cardstock, and this is cut at 5 by 7 inches tall. And I want to add a little bit of shading, a hint of gold into. I always think of fall hues of gold and yellows and reds. So I'm just taking this Delicata gold ink, and I'm just blending a little bit on the edges of this gold on this craft cardstock. And then I'm also going to add some splatter, gold splatter all over the surface of the cardstock. Now, the other thing I also want to let you know is that when I'm making invitations or anything that is special, I like to use really heavyweight cardstock. So the white cardstock that I used is smooth, 120-pound heavyweight cardstock, and so is the craft cardstock as well, and that gives it a really luxurious look to your invitation. And I'm just going to mount that colored panel onto this craft cardstock using some foam tape and some glue adhesive, just to make sure that it adheres pretty strong. Now moving on, that completed the invite, and I'm moving on to the fun part of this of this project today, is creating this placeholder. So I'm taking that cardstock that I showed you earlier, which I cut to 4 inches by 6 inches tall, and I'm just going to score it at 3 inches. That is right in the middle. And as I'm scoring it, I'm not pressing it hard. I'm just adding a very light score line just to give me an indication as to where I need to stamp the cornucopia. So here I'm just going to draw in a line so that you can see where that score line is. I can see it, but I think on the video you won't be able to see it. So I'm just drawing in a really light pencil line there. And I'm going to place this back into my MISTI, and I'm going to take this cornucopia and I'm going to place that cornucopia in such a way that half of it, not really half, a little bit of it is hanging out above the score line. So the basket's like, you know, that little tail thingy, I'm just letting it hang over that that score line. And I'm taking this coordinating die that goes along with this cornucopia, and I'm going to place it on the place where I have where I have colored, and I'm just going to use some tape to hold the die in its place. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my very loved die cutting plates, and I am going to lay it on my two die cutting plates, right? So I'm laying it on the bottom plate, and I'm going to take the second plate. You can see that score line right there where the pencil mark is. I don't know if you can see the pencil mark, but where we have the score line is where I'm going to place the second plate over. So I'm not going to place the second plate all over the die, because I don't want it to die cut the entire cornucopia. I just want that edge to hang off. So when I finish die cutting and I take it off, and you can see it now what happens, and I'm going to just remove the tape here, and I want to make sure that I don't tear when I am removing. So I like to pull my tape perpendicular so that I don't pull the paper or the cardstock and tear it. And so when I'm done with that, I'm just going to there was that pencil mark, as I said. I'm just going to erase that, and I'm going to rescore this on my scoring tape. Scoring board. Remember, I didn't really score it hard enough. I just created a line, an indication line, as to where that half point of this of the 6 inches cardstock is. So now I'm taking my scoring tool, and I'm really pressing it hard, and I'm scoring that down, and I'm just going to press down the score line. And when I do that, that little tail of the cornucopia kind of pops up, and it really gives a neat effect on a place card. And you can see how cool that looks. And so when you lay it on the table, that little tail kind of sticks out, and you can see that's how it looks. Isn't that fun? I thought I made that with all my kids' name, and my name and my husband's name, and even our little dog's name, so that we could all sit on the table and have our name placeholders and have a really fancy meal, even if it is just the 5 of us. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? And then if in case you have a paper which bleeds through, mine did not, but if it bleeds through, you can always cut another piece of dye and place it behind it, and no one will see that little messy coloring back. And here's the finished look of both the projects that we created. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video and subscribe to our channel. And you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.